Number 140, The Art of Speculation, Looking for Your Own Gold and Finding It, I'll add. I am Kathleen Wiley, a Jungian psychoanalyst, and I am here with Deborah Henson-Conant, a composer, a mentor, a coach. We both play the harp, and that's why we call this Jung at Harp. Almost every week, we come together to have a conversation to explore a question. We don't start with answers, but we start with questions. And then we trust the creative process and the unconscious muse showing up to help us together and with your input in the sidebar with your comments to find answers that are meaningful and that might allow us to more fully live and find our gold. So, Deborah, do you want to say a little bit about finding gold this morning?
Yeah. And I also want to say that, one of the things that Kathleen and I discovered when we first became friends was that we both love the art of conversation and what happens in conversation, speculation conversations, not conversations where you're coming in to prove something or you're coming in to explain something or ask something, but a conversation where you're speculating with someone else, often speculating on something that neither of you knows the answer to, and that maybe nobody knows the answer to see
Mhm.
what comes up from that game or play of conversation. And so when we meet each week, we kind of look at what's happening in our lives, and then we look at what subject emerges out of that. And I'm about to have a 10-week class that's all about creative resonance. In other words, developing your ability to be more resonant, which doesn't mean that there's more. Like if an instrument is more resonant, there's not more strings, there's not more instruments, it's not bigger. It is more resonant. There's more of it in itself. And I'm realizing that as I
Mm.
say this to you, Kathleen, my part of my spiritual journey as a person, I don't know, spiritual or linguistic or whatever you want to call it, was my discovery of the word noumenon when I
Mm.
was probably about 15, and I discovered it in the midst of a game of dictionary. And it was just one of those moments when I opened up the dictionary, literally put my finger on a word, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, what does this meaning is so powerful. And the meaning of the word was a thing in itself, as
Mhm.
separate from its physical, its physical presentation. And that was so fascinating to me that it's been a lifelong exploration. And it's one of the reasons that deconstruction of creative ideas is so meaningful to me, and why I
Mhm.
teach that and why I use it in my work, because deconstructing something, taking away what it looks like in the physical universe and discovering what it is, allows me to resonate more with it and allows me to translate. So here's a perfect example in orchestration. So in orchestration, that's all about creating gesture or feeling with different instruments. So I might write something for the harp um, that sounds like, that's a harpistic gesture. But if I'm writing for a flute, or I'm writing for a timpani, or I'm writing for another percussionist, I can create that same gesture in a completely different way. So if I'm creating that gesture, which is I'm going from one world to another, or here's the
Mhm.
moment when this comes to fruition, or whatever it is, on a timpani, it might be a timpani roll, starting from soft to loud. On the harp, it's all these notes going up and down. Timpani roll, soft to loud. Cymbal roll, I would use soft
Mhm.
mallets and do the same thing. You would still have that feeling. If I was using violins, they might do a run, meaning that
Mhm.
they would do, and it wouldn't be on my harp. If you were to write the notes out, it's a series of notes in one line that go up and down, getting bigger. On the violin, I might do it differently. I might do kind of up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, out, so that I'm building the same gesture. But in order to build that gesture, I first need to understand the difference between, if I set the difference between a poetic translation and a literal translation. If I tried to literally translate what I'm doing on the harp to another instrument, it wouldn't have the impact or the effect. The gesture and the intention, everything, all that would be gone. And what this is saying to me is that each of us has a way of being self-expressed, of being creatively resonant. And part of the discovery here, part of the speculation is what are the foundational things so that you don't go out. I will stop in one moment. I mean, what I notice in teaching harpists and other musicians is that they often think this is what it looks like to be self-expressed. I look like this person, I'm playing this kind of music. Whereas in fact, it may look completely different for each person. And in order to find that thing in which you are actually expressing you, the gold of you, the speculation conversation starts breaking things down till you can find the lowest common denominator or lowest common denominator, otherwise known as the elemental, the fundamental elements. And then you can build up from that, and each person can be doing the same thing and it will look completely different.
Yeah, my mind is in several different places. So I want to circle back to one of the very first things you said about conversation, and that when we were talking about the art of speculation, I was looking up the root of speculation, and we started with spectacles, and of course we know spectacles is a word for glasses, which allow us to see. And so the word spectacle, as well as speculation, does come from the Old Latin. That means to spy out, to examine, to look at. And you started talking about the art of conversation as a way of examining and looking at a topic is what we do. And another mid 1500s use of the word speculation was the pursuit of the truth by means of thinking, which we do each week together or almost every week. So when I think about finding the goal, and you started talking about the impulse on the harp and the impulse of wanting to express a certain felt sense, is how I would say it. Then what occurred to me is there had to be a dialogue. You had to begin to look at how does this instrument create sound? How does this instrument create a felt sense? So you had a particular feeling state you wanted to evoke, the music to convey, as well as to evoke in the listener. And so that had to be adapted to each instrument, which meant you had to look at, to examine, to see the truth of that instrument and how it naturally and organically moved, the essence of how it worked. And it is so very true that to be who we are, we have to examine and look at how it is our sound, so to speak, moves, how it is we move into the world, and be willing to be in a dialogue with it. Because that's the other thing I heard. It wasn't a dialogue with words that you were having with these instruments as you were adapting and writing parts for this felt sense for the different instruments, but it was a dialogue that transcended words, that had something to do with the essence of your intention, the numinosity of your intention, and the numinosity of the sound of the instrument, and where they were meeting and being resonant.
It's interesting. You're making me think, as you were speaking, the word discovery came up, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's a collaboration of discovery, which is what the strings of passion that I'm using in the next quarter is about. It gives you these lenses to look through so that you are
Mm-hmm.
not just like, if I'm just looking at something and I don't know what to look at, but if I have someone say, okay, now look at the shape. Okay, now I see the shape. Okay, great. Now I'm observing the shape. Okay, look at the texture. Now I'm looking at the texture. Now I can see something else. Okay, look at the
Mm-hmm.
perspective. Then I can look at something else. And that's one of the things that, why often you talk about, when you're talking about Jung, you talk about archetypes, or you talk about the, collective unconscious. So it's a new lens to look through, where I can start seeing in newly. I don't, you're the expert, and yet you've given me a new lens. And I think that, part of what we do as leaders or teachers, when we're sharing our discovery, like I'm out to share my discovery of creative
Mhm.
expression, but I cannot actually tell someone that. All I can do is give them the tools with which they can then discover it for themselves.
Right.
And through
Right.
right, and through engagement with the instrument. And what often happens when it's with the arts is that we feel that we have to have a certain level of technical ability before we can actually touch those peak experience of artistic experience. And the thing that I'm exploring now, that I'm just so passionate about, I mean, I've always been passionate about it, but now I realize, okay, this is something I'm studying and then sharing, is just like there's a different way to approach in each instrument how to create that thing, there's a
Mhm.
different way to get at it at your technical ability. So we have this sense, I have to be good enough to do that. But what if that's not true? And there's a way to achieve that level of self-expression at any level of technical ability. It's just going to be different. For example,
Mhm.
I could show anybody who'd never touched a harp how to create, something like this. That's pretty easy to do. It's often easier for someone who doesn't play the harp to do that than someone who has a little bit.
Mm.
There's another way to do that, which to give that feeling, which might be that gives a similar feeling, but it requires more technical ability. This might require even more, like, it still has that same feeling of building. So what I find often happens is that people get stuck thinking, I have to do it like this. When in fact, if I'm just starting, I can get the same feeling by doing that, which is easy, which has a lower bar to entry. And I don't even mean lower, I mean like a whatever, lower, higher. It's a more accessible bar to entry. What am I talking about, Kathleen?
Well, I think that part of what you're talking about is that with the creative resonance it- course that's coming up, that's tied into strings of passion, that part of what your passion is about is helping people take the risk to speculate, to see what is in terms of their own technical ability and what they desire to express and where that can come together. So that you're offering them a vehicle, a container, kind of a blueprint that can help them be safe. I mean, often, we don't feel safe to speculate and go in search of our own gold because it does mean experimenting. And it does mean being willing to dialogue and listen for what's yet to be known. Part of what I keep thinking about ever since you started talking was how, for for me as a Jungian analyst in my own life, and what Carl Jung taught us was that it is the dialogue between our conscious self and the unconscious as it's making itself known that makes the difference in terms of our ability to live harmoniously in alignment with ourself and to move in a way that is congruent with our essence. You know, and to have a way through dialogue, through being willing to be in relationship to all that it is, to come to know the numinosity of our psyche soul that wants to express in a certain way. And I think again, that's part of what you are focusing on helping musicians and creatives that you work with to be able to do, is to really let go, start where they are. That also keeps going through my mind.
Mhm.
Start where you are, and quit comparing and competing, and start where you are with what you can do and who you are now, and begin to just do it, to look at that, to examine it, to spy it out, in that old sense of the word speculate, to spy out what really is the seed, the beautiful sound in that, the beautiful words, the beautiful desire.
So much is coming into my head in everything you're saying. Our numinosity. When you said our numinosity, I just wanted to go back and explain what that word means and think about what it opened up for me, which was when you said our numinosity. And numinous means a thing in itself, or a numenon is a thing in itself,
Mm-hmm.
as separate from its physical existence in the world. So when you said our numinosity, I was like, oh, so it's like you're saying we're in dialogue, or we're in engagement with this instrument as well as this
Mm-hmm.
instrument, and all the instruments, the eyes. I mean, if I was a symphony orchestra, then my eyes might be the woodwinds, and my whatever, each of my senses, each of the ways of expressing. So the getting into the discovery and of who this, what is it about me that can express me, and the reason that I love teaching people this about them is because I love to see that person
Mm-hmm.
emerge. It's like watching a geyser. When someone actually gets to the point that they can let go for a minute of, like, well, I'm not good enough, and this
Mm-hmm.
isn't, I can't do this. This is too simple. This isn't real music. And they
Mm-hmm.
actually do it, and you see them, and it's just like, oh my God, I saw a person. Like, I actually saw a person. It's so powerful. And so it also comes along with the need to value the thing we can do. And I always tell people this, that I have this song, The Nightingale, that is my best known song, most hits, most covers on YouTube, all of that. And I didn't want to perform it for so long because it didn't sound like a real song to me, because it didn't seem impressive. It's just, it's simple. Like, I mean, it's got a descending bass line, and I can see that as I'm starting to play it now,
Mm-hmm.
like the way I saw it before was like, well, I can't show off with that. And what I'm seeing now is that, oh my gosh, it's so simple that I can be safely self-expressive with it. I'm not making it anything. So what I'm hearing is part of this journey, part of the discovery requires not just putting some spectacles on, but taking some off. Because I realized if I'm out to prove to myself that I'm not good enough so that I can stay hidden, like I'm gonna work on this until I'm good enough. Good enough meaning you can't see me anymore. Okay, I'm good enough that I can be hidden. Then I can just stay in that I'm not good enough, keep proving that, keep hidden. And if someone comes to me and says, you know what? You don't have to do all of this stuff. You can do this. This is also that piece.
Mm-hmm.
That is the same piece. And it's something that you can touch and you can be expressive with right now. And as you start being expressive with it, you discover yourself. You start resonating with yourself. What am I now? I'm like off on this tangent. What am I just bring me back again, Kathleen?
Well, um, you've said a couple of things that I think is important. That if we're really going to spy out who we are, or we're going to spy out the essence of the felt sense we want to convey in a tune and a piece of music, we have to let go of all of the embellishments and trying to make it look fancy, bigger than, because ultimately all of that just hides the essence. And that when we can get comfortable in being seen with the essence, this is so true with people around expressing their feelings to themselves as well as to other people, is it can be so difficult just to say to ourselves, that really hurt me. Or, gosh, I was really joyous about that. It's the simplest of things, but somehow we dismiss it so quickly. And we feel like it's not enough to say that to someone else. So instead of saying we're hurt or saying I was really joyous about that, we go off on some tangent about what they did wrong or how they did something really right and we want them to do it again. But we lose the essence of the felt sense in the moment. And so I think what you're talking about is um, as we discover and we put the spectacles on, we do have to take off the distorting spectacles. The distorting spectacles that say, unless it's complicated, then it's not good enough. Unless it's loud and boisterous and fast, it's not good enough. Or unless I can really explain my feelings and rationalize it away, it's not good enough. We have to let go of all those things.
It's funny because I'm thinking, we started talking about spectacles, and I'm thinking that this conversation is a speculation, so it's a way to look.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also thinking of what I was doing last night, which was working on a piece called My Mother's Mexican Hat, and I'm working with a team. It's a piece for orchestra, but we're creating it for solo harp, and it's really all about gesture, and it's got these big gestures that I can't play on this harp because it's for the concert harp, but it allows me to just it's the opposite of this,
Mm-hmm.
which is why it's the first movement, and a piece like that is the second movement. But it just allows it's just but it's all minor and fun. It's so fun. And as I watch myself, I videotape it to share with the team, and I watch myself when I hit that point of the piece, when it goes from technical difficulty to just I'm just gonna do this. I can see that my body fills with energy, and it's just so much fun. And so these two things are true. This is true, and this also is true. That, and they're both explorations. I mean, this is the thing that's also fascinating to me. It's not about execution. It's about learning enough of the piece that you can then be expressive. And through being expressive, you start discovering something, and that something seems to be connection in which you are more creatively resonant. Well, what is the point of that?
What's the point of being more creatively
Yes, I
resonant?
know. I know that I'm making an entire class in it, but why not ask? That's the value of speculation. Why not ask?
Yeah, so for me as a Jungian analyst and the person that I am, um, it's worth everything because I I believe that we're each a ray of the divine being, and that we're each a unique ray. And if we don't fully embody the essence of the ray we are, it doesn't come into the world. I mean, every fingerprint is different. Every voice print they're proving now is different. They have their scientific equipment now. We're all unique, and so I have a belief that we each come in with a unique essence that wants to be expressed, meaning it wants to be embodied. And maybe that embodiment is through how you dress and how you arrange your house and the meals you cook. Maybe it's through creating pieces of music. Maybe it's through words. Maybe it's through I mean, it's expressed in our every action, in our every and when we, so it's everything to me. That's my belief. Now, that may not be someone else's belief.
Well, I can hear that as you're saying that. I know that the what you created, aside from your work with people, is this embodiment circle. And it was as
Hmm.
you were saying what you just said that I realized, oh, right, this is what she's about. Like
Yeah.
it's this embodiment, which is one of the places that we're matching, because I'm also about physical self-expression. What it, not but anyway, whatever. And but and and I'm asking myself now, and you, but why? I can feel the value of it. And as you were
Hmm.
speaking, and you were saying, we're a ray of light and the light's coming through us, and part of me might say, oh yeah, you want me to shine like that? Well, forget it. I'm going to shine in my own way. Like I could feel that I might say that.
Right.
But but that but then what I heard in my head was, why? Because it's being alive.
Hmm.
This is how to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Jung says it beautifully in his autobiography. He says, in the final analysis, our life counts for something, um, only because of the essential we embody. And if we do not embody that, then our life is wasted. And I think that, it's up to each of us. And part of my passion for embodiment and the embodiment circle and the work that or play that we do there is that um, I think lots of times people don't know what that means. So to begin to understand, if we're going to embody our essence, we have to develop the capacity to listen, to have the spectacles energetically, to look, to spy out what is going on in the deepest recesses of my body. Is that an instinctive gut prompt? Is that a passion of my heart and larger self? Is that some learned internalized head idea? These things we can begin to discern through body awareness and through developing the capacity to listen and see. But most of us just defensively, very from childhood forward, start to quit listening to ourselves and listen to the outside world so that we fit in, so we get accolades, so that we, don't get scolded. So, I mean, it's just part of what happens.
As you were speaking, I was thinking, what we see, and so we see others be self-expressed, and then we go to do the same thing. We reach out to do the same thing, I think, often. And as you were speaking, I was realizing, deconstruction in the strings of passion, there's impulse, structure, character, roles, practices, deconstruction, and liftoff. And by the way, I'm going through all of those one by one this Sunday in a workshop. And if you go to my website, hipharp.com, up on the top there's a banner, and it says something about signing up for the 5-day vision to action challenge. If you sign up to that, you will also get access to this workshop. But what I realized as you were speaking is that, part of my job, because deconstruction, I've been doing it ever since I heard that word. So I've been doing it
Mhm.
my whole life, and probably even before then. It helps. I realize that. So I play this tune. Whoops, wrong key. Let's get into the right
Mhm.
key now. Um, so I would play it. So, but I can give someone access to that by teaching them to go and to say,
Mhm.
you don't need to do the whole thing in order to have access. You can go over
Mhm.
and over again. You can sing la da 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 la da dee da da. I mean, you can it can open up in any of its parts. You don't have to play the whole piece in order to start getting access to being able to engage so that you have that creative resonance. And now this exists, even if it's just that. That exists for you as a thing. Maybe next week that exists for you, and then you put them together, and that is enough. And then the next week you add that, and you realize it's the same thing, just down a step. So you've already learned it, and you're just putting it in a new place. To be able to give that access, then what the payoff for me as a viewer or a listener is that then I see somehow we come through that. We actually come through when we can embody it. We can come through it.
Yes, and I think that that can be true for like my mother's Mexican hat and the more frenetic.
Right.
I think the key to finding your gold is that the speculation be in service of the felt sense of where you are in the moment. I think that it's a very different experience when someone's playing either piece of music and they're fully present to it, or they're playing it from a persona, from wanting to give a certain impression. It's a very different
Well,
place.
yeah.
And
And what I started thinking is I will have this idea, well, I don't play this well enough. I can't act like I can play it. But the acting, I mean, there's trying to show off, which is not that, well, I love show offs, but trying to prove yourself always kind of shuts down. But loving this, that's enough, loving that is enough, knowing that you are enough in that moment to infuse that with meaning and expression, and being okay with that. This is what I can do, and that is beautiful. Yeah, I can see that there's another whole tune, and this is enough in this moment. And when I see someone do that, I see everything. I see enough.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about there's an interdisciplinary group of psychoanalysts, neuroscientists, developmental psychologists, etc., called the Boston Process Change Study Group. And a few years ago, they set out to figure out what is it that makes the difference in a therapeutic encounter. And what they discovered is they said it has nothing to do with theory or technique or perspective either. But what makes the difference in a therapeutic relationship to be effective is what they called moments of meeting, where there are true moments of meeting where people are together in their essence, and it isn't about the words. And what you're talking about, and I think what we're talking about is speculation and finding your gold, is those moments of meeting with the essence of where you are in this moment in time and the desire of your heart, soul, and gut in alignment, and the essence of that other, whether it is the creative other wanting expression from inside of you to outside, or it's the other person you're in dialogue with, and those moments of meeting ultimately are where we do find the gold within and without.
I'm just moments of meeting. I was just wondering as you were speaking, I was like, wow, that's it. That's the gold. Moments of meeting, just having that makes all the difference for me in this day. Suddenly everything's alive around me. And I'm wondering, like if Kathleen had said right when we first started talking this morning, I want to tell you about moments of meeting, it wouldn't have been the same. There was something, I just want to say, this was a perfect example of the experience of speculation. We start out and there's the gold, and there's no, for me, because what we ended up at that moment was the thing that will change my life today and maybe the rest of my life. Like finding that or finding the phrase from Jerzy Grotowski, don't do more, hide less. These things become the fabric of an open door, or of being alive.
Right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Kathleen. Thank you. This is why I love talking to you.
Mhm. It's always a discovery. Our speculations lead us to gold, and I value that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. And so thank you everyone for providing, just being here and in this space with us, which gives a different kind of focus than if we were just talking alone. Not better or worse, but it's a different focus. And thank you for
Right.
sharing this, and thank you for everybody who comments before, during, and afterwards. And Kathleen, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.